In this tutorial, we're going to continue working with our returned data from our AJAX request. Specifically, we're going to be dealing with event handling. Now, we have returned a very small list of the 10 most recent items that have been entered into our database based on the date. Now, each one of these entries at the bottom has a little section that says more in, and then a category. So we want to set it up so our end user will be able to just click on the category name and request more information from our processor to see more blog entries related to that topic. So the first thing we need to do is set up the event handling that will allow the end user to trigger the retrieval of data. So let's go ahead and jump on over into Dreamweaver and look at how we're going to set this up. Now we're going to need to modify our load function here in the xhrget function that we had set up. Once our data is retrieved and loaded into our blog contents, we're going to want to bind it. Now I'm going to set up this binding as a separate function because I'm going to reuse this, and I'm going to call this initialize elements. Alright, initialize elements. And then I'm going to jump outside of this add on load, and I'm going to set up my initialize elements function. And this is where I'm going to set up my binding. Now, the binding that I want to do is going to be performed on every single one of the category links. Because if I take a look at what's going on with the get blog entries, I'll see down here where we have the more in, I will see that it has a div tag inside of it with the title, as well as a class set to that category links. So every single little description of a category is going to have the class of category links on it. And that's what our end user is going to be interacting with. So I need to select all of the category links. So I'm going to jump back here into my dojo scripts, and I'm going to select all of those elements with that class on it. Now we have already seen that we can select individual items by ID by using dojo.byId, and this allows us to select based on the ID attribute of a given DOM element, and it functions just like document.getElementById. It's just a shortcut. However, that's just going to return one item, and it has to have the ID attribute. What we want, though, is we want a collection of items that have specific criteria, and that's where dojo.query comes into play. Dojo.query is a very sophisticated way of selecting items inside of the DOM based on multiple criteria, and it's possible to do some really robust selection, and if you're interested in that, I do recommend, as with everything, that you check out the API a bit further. So it's going to be dojo.query, and our query is actually pretty simple here. We're just looking to get everything that has the class of category links. So I'll set up category links here, right? So that's going to return references to all of the items in the DOM that have the class of category links. Once we have selected those, we're going to want to perform some type of operation on them. And Dojo gives us a great little shortcut here called for each. For each is going to allow us to cycle through a collection that has been returned to us and perform some type of action on them. So we're going to be binding our links to trigger another function. Now inside of the for each, I'm going to set it up so we have an inline function, and that inline function is going to be passing in an identifier for each one of the elements inside of this collection. So I'm calling this item, I'm going to pass in, and in this function we're going to want to bind. And so event handle mistake. So event handling will be set up on each one of the items that are passed through this for each. Now the way that we do that is with another little method that's available to us here called dojo.connect. Dojo.connect is going to allow us to take a DOM element, listen for a specific event, and then have that event trigger another function. So in our case here, we are going to want to monitor the item itself for when someone clicks on it, and then we're going to want to trigger another function. Now, this function hasn't been set up yet, but it will be in just a moment. It's going to be another AJAX request, and I'm going to call this retrieve data. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and set up the skeleton of retrieve data down here so that we have something to check to see if our event handling has been set up appropriately. So I do retrieve data. We'll just do a simple little alert and do hello dojo again. All right. I'll save that and upload, and I'll refresh in Firefox. And then whenever I click on, say, music, I get hello dojo. Whenever I come down and click on programming, I get the same thing. So indeed, it has gone through and it has set up on all of the items with the category links class event handling so that it's going to trigger the retrieve data.